Rosa wiped down the marble kitchen counter for the third time that morning. It wasn't dirty. She just liked things to shine. After 3 years of working in this massive house, she'd learned that her boss, Mr. Chen, noticed everything. A smudge on a window, a crooked picture frame, the way his morning coffee tasted if the water was even 1 degree too hot. She didn't mind, though. At 42, Rosa had cleaned enough houses to know that some employers treated you like furniture, and others treated you like family. Mr. Chen was somewhere in between. He was polite, paid on time, and never yelled. That was more than she could say about some of her previous jobs back in Manila. Rosa had come to America 7 years ago, with nothing but 2 suitcases and a prayer. She'd left behind her elderly parents, her small apartment, and everything familiar. The plan was simple: work hard, send money home, and maybe, just maybe, save enough to bring her mother over for medical treatment. Her father had passed away 2 years ago, and her mother's diabetes was getting worse. The medications she needed cost more in 1 month than Rosa used to make in 6 months back home. So here she was, in this enormous house that had 12 bedrooms, a movie theater in the basement, and a garage that looked like a car museum. Mr. Chen was a tech billionaire. Rosa didn't really understand what he did, something about apps and investments and computers. All she knew was that he was rich, really rich, the kind of rich where he probably wouldn't notice if a few $1,000s went missing, not that she'd ever take anything. Her mother raised her better than that. The house sat on 15 acres in the countryside, surrounded by perfect green lawns and gardens that a team of landscapers maintained twice a week. The nearest neighbor was half a mile away. The nearest hospital was 45 minutes down winding country roads. Rosa had driven past it once when she needed to pick up medicine for little Lily. Lily was Mr. Chen's daughter, 8 years old, with her mother's eyes and her father's serious personality. Well, serious for an 8-year-old. She loved drawing, asked a million questions, and had a laugh that sounded like tiny bells ringing. Rosa's heart had broken when she first learned about Lily's mother. Mrs. Chen had died 2 years ago. Cancer. Rosa had only worked here for 3 years, so she'd never met the woman, but her presence was still everywhere. Photos on the mantel, her favorite books still on the bedside table, the garden she'd planted now maintained by strangers. Mr. Chen never talked about his wife, but sometimes Rosa would find him standing in the doorway of what used to be her art studio, just staring at the empty easel. Grief did strange things to people. Mr. Chen threw himself into work. 18-hour days, video conferences that ran until midnight. He traveled constantly for business, leaving Lily with Rosa more often than with himself. Rosa didn't judge him for it. Everyone handled loss differently, but she worried about Lily. The little girl needed her father, not just a nanny and a housekeeper. That's what Rosa had become over the years, more than just hired help. She braided Lily's hair for school. She packed her lunches with little notes tucked inside. She stayed late when Mr. Chen's meetings ran long, reading bedtime stories and checking under the bed for monsters. Lily had started calling her Tita Rosa, which meant Aunt Rosa in Tagalog. The first time it happened, Rosa had cried in the laundry room for 5 minutes. She'd never had children of her own. There'd been a man once back in Manila. They'd planned to get married, have a family, build a life. But he'd disappeared one day with their savings, and Rosa learned a hard lesson about trust. After that, she focused on survival, not dreams. But Lily had crept into her heart when she wasn't looking. The biggest challenge was Lily's asthma. The poor child had inherited it from her mother's side of the family. It wasn't usually too bad, but when it flared up, it was terrifying. Rosa had learned to recognize the signs. The slight wheeze, the way Lily would put her hand on her chest, the cough that sounded too deep for such a small person. They kept inhalers everywhere. In the kitchen, in Lily's backpack, in the car, next to her bed. Mr. Chen had given Rosa strict instructions when she first started working there. If Lily has an asthma attack, use the inhaler immediately. If it doesn't help within 5 minutes, call 911. Don't wait. Don't hesitate. Rosa had repeated those instructions to herself so many times they were burned into her brain. The house had rules. Lots of rules. Mr. Chen wasn't mean about it, but he liked order. Shoes off at the door. Lily's toys put away before bedtime. Groceries organized by category in the pantry. Windows cleaned every Thursday. And most importantly, absolutely no one was allowed in his study except him. The study was Mr. Chen's sanctuary. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a massive oak desk, windows overlooking the garden, and walls covered with framed articles about his business success. Rosa cleaned in there once a week, but only when he was present, watching her like a hawk. She'd learned to dust around his things without moving them even a millimeter. On one wall hung a set of keys. Not car keys, the car keys. Everyone who worked in that house knew about the Ferrari. It lived in the climate-controlled garage, behind a locked door, under a custom car cover that probably cost more than Rosa's yearly salary. She'd only seen it twice, both times when Mr. Chen had shown it to important visitors. It was red. Bright, beautiful, impossible red. The kind of red that looked like it was glowing from the inside. Mr. Chen had explained once to a visitor that it was a 1962 Ferrari 250 GTO. Only 39 were ever made. It was worth $48 million. Rosa had nearly dropped the tray of coffee she was carrying when she heard that number. $48 million. For a car that never got driven. It just sat there perfect and useless like a museum piece. Rosa tried not to think about how many people that money could help, how many medical bills it could pay, how many families it could feed. It wasn't her place to judge. Rich people collected things. She'd seen it in every wealthy house she'd worked in. Paintings worth millions. Wine that cost more per bottle than her monthly rent. Watches that could fund a small school. But still, $48 million. Mr. Chen was protective of that car in a way he wasn't protective of anything else. He checked on it every morning before work. He adjusted the temperature and humidity in the garage personally. He'd fired a previous housekeeper for accidentally bumping into it with a vacuum cleaner, leaving a tiny scratch that cost $20,000 to fix. Rosa made absolutely sure to give that garage a wide berth. Thursday started like any other day. Rosa arrived at 6 in the morning, let herself in with her key, and started the coffee maker. Mr. Chen liked his coffee ready by 6:30, exactly when he came downstairs in his suit and tie, already on his phone, already working. "Good morning, Mr. Chen," Rosa said, pouring his coffee into his favorite mug. "Morning," he replied without looking up from his screen. "I have a meeting in the city tonight. Won't be back until late. Can you stay with Lily?" "Of course," Rosa said. She'd already assumed as much. Thursday meetings usually ran long. Her inhaler prescriptions need refilling. "Can you handle that?" "Already done. I picked them up yesterday." He finally looked up, giving her a brief nod of approval. "Thank you. I don't know what we'd do without you." It was a small compliment, but coming from Mr. Chen, it meant something. Rosa felt a warm glow in her chest as she headed upstairs to wake Lily for school. The little girl was sprawled across her bed like a starfish, her dark hair tangled on the pillow. Rosa sat on the edge of the bed and gently shook her shoulder. "Time to wake up, sweetheart." Lily groaned and pulled the blanket over her head. 5 more minutes. "You said that yesterday and we were almost late." Rosa pulled back the curtains, letting morning sunshine flood the room. "Come on, I made your favorite breakfast." That got her attention. Lily peeked out from under the blanket. "Chocolate chip pancakes?" "With extra chocolate chips." Lily bolted upright, suddenly wide awake. This was their morning routine, the same dance they did every school day. Rosa loved these quiet moments before the chaos began. After breakfast, after the bus picked up Lily, after Mr. Chen left for work in his usual car, a practical BMW that he actually drove, Rosa began her daily routine. Laundry, dusting, organizing. The house was so big it never really felt finished. By the time she cleaned the last room, the first room needed cleaning again. Her own car had started making a terrible grinding noise that morning. She'd been meaning to take it to a mechanic, but money was tight. She'd just sent $3,000 home to Manila for her mother's medications. The car could wait another month. It was still running, barely, and that's all that mattered. By late afternoon, the grinding noise turned into something worse, a loud bang and then nothing. The car died in the driveway. Rosa tried starting it 5 times before accepting the truth. It wasn't going anywhere. She'd have to call a tow truck tomorrow, another expense she didn't need. When Mr. Chen came home briefly to change for his city meeting, Rosa mentioned the car situation. "Would it be okay if I stayed overnight? My car broke down and I don't have a way to get home and back." He waved his hand dismissively, already thinking about his meeting. "Of course. Guest room is yours." I should be back by midnight, maybe later. Lily's homework is done? All finished. We practiced her spelling words 3 times. Good, good. He was checking his watch, his phone, his briefcase. Always moving. Always thinking about the next thing. Call me if you need anything. And then he was gone, racing toward whatever important meeting required his attention more than dinner with his daughter. Rosa watched his taillights disappear down the long driveway and felt that familiar sadness settle in her chest. She and Lily had a lovely evening. They made cookies together, getting flour everywhere and not caring. They watched a movie about talking animals. They played Go Fish until Lily started yawning. By 8:30, they were curled up in Lily's bed, Rosa reading from their current favorite book, a story about a girl who could talk to stars. Rosa closed the book and smoothed Lily's hair back from her forehead. Time for sleep, little one. Tita Rosa. Lily's voice was small in the dim room. Yes, sweetheart. Do you think my mom can see me? From heaven? Rosa's heart clenched. She chose her words carefully. I think mothers always watch over their children, no matter where they are. Do you think she's proud of me? I know she is. You're brave and kind and smart. Any mother would be proud. Lily snuggled deeper into her blankets, satisfied with this answer. I'm glad you're here, Tita Rosa. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. Rosa stayed until Lily's breathing became deep and even, the sound of peaceful sleep. She kissed the little girl's forehead and quietly left the room, leaving the door cracked open and the hallway light on, just how Lily liked it. The big house settled into nighttime quiet. Rosa went downstairs to clean up the cookie mess, thinking about how lucky she was despite everything. Yes, she was far from home. Yes, she missed her mother. Yes, her car was broken and her savings were thin. But she had a job she didn't hate, a warm place to sleep tonight and a little girl who called her Tita. It wasn't the life she'd planned, but it was a good life anyway. She had no idea that in less than an hour everything would change, that she'd face an impossible choice, that the thing she feared most, touching that $48 million car, would become the only thing standing between Lily and disaster. Rosa finished wiping down the counters and headed toward the guest room, thinking about nothing more serious than whether she'd remembered to pack her phone charger. Sometimes, the biggest moments of our lives start in the most ordinary ways. Rosa was folding laundry in the guest room when she heard it. A sound that made her freeze mid-fold, a sock dangling from her hand. It was Lily's cough. Not the normal cough. The deep one. The one that came from her chest and sounded wrong. She dropped the laundry and moved quickly down the hallway. The sound was coming from Lily's bedroom. Rosa pushed the door open to find Lily sitting up in bed, her small hand pressed against her chest, coughing in a way that made Rosa's stomach drop. Lily? Sweetheart, are you okay? The little girl shook her head. Her eyes were wide, scared. Between coughs, she wheezed, Can't breathe. Good. Rosa's training kicked in immediately. Stay calm, don't scare her. Fear makes it worse. She sat on the edge of the bed and rubbed Lily's back in slow circles. Okay, honey. It's okay. We're going to use your inhaler and you'll feel better. Where is it? Lily pointed to her nightstand with a shaking hand. Rosa grabbed the blue inhaler, shook it like the doctor had shown her and held it up to Lily's mouth. Deep breath in, sweetheart. Nice and slow, Lily tried. She really tried. But the wheezing was getting louder and her breathing was becoming more labored. Rosa administered the inhaler, one puff, wait, another puff. They sat there together, Rosa counting slowly to 60 in her head, watching Lily's chest rise and fall with effort. The inhaler should have helped by now. It always helped. Rosa felt the first flutter of real panic in her chest but pushed it down. How do you feel, honey? Is it better? Lily shook her head. Tears were starting to form in her eyes. Still tight. Rosa's mind raced. Okay. Protocol. Mr. Chen's instructions. If the first inhaler doesn't work, use the backup. Where was the backup? She rushed to Lily's bathroom where they kept the spare medications. Her hands fumbled with the medicine cabinet, knocking over bottles in her hurry. There, the backup inhaler. She grabbed it, shook it, and rushed back to Lily. But something felt wrong. The inhaler felt too light. Rosa pressed the top. Nothing came out. She tried again. Still nothing, empty. The backup inhaler was empty. No, 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 Rosa whispered. How did this happen? She was always so careful. Always checked. But with everything going on, picking up prescriptions, her car breaking down, the regular chaos of the day, had she forgotten to check this one? Had Lily used it and not told anyone? It didn't matter now. What mattered was that Lily's lips were starting to turn pale, and her breathing sounded like she was trying to suck air through a straw. Okay, sweetheart, stay calm for me. I'm going to call for help. Rosa tried to keep her voice steady as she pulled out her phone. Her hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped it. She dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? Rosa caught herself. Mr. Chen's daughter, 8 years old. Severe asthma attack. The inhaler isn't working. We need an ambulance right away. She rattled off the address, speaking fast, too fast, having to repeat it twice. Ma'am, I need you to stay calm. We're sending an ambulance to your location now. Is the child conscious? Yes, she's awake. But she can't breathe properly. Her lips are getting pale. There was a pause, typing on a keyboard. Rosa wanted to scream at the dispatcher to move faster. Every second felt like an hour. Ma'am, I'm showing a major accident on Highway 47, multiple vehicles. All our ambulances in your area are currently responding to that scene. Rosa felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. What? No, you don't understand. She needs help now. She's 8 years old. I understand, ma'am. We're doing everything we can. The earliest we can get an ambulance to you is approximately 40 to 50 minutes. 50 minutes. 50 minutes. Rosa looked at Lily, who was now struggling with every breath, her small chest heaving up and down, her fingers clutching the bedsheets. 50 minutes might as well be 50 years. Ma'am, are you able to transport the child yourself? Given the circumstances, it would be faster for you to drive her to County General Hospital. It's about 30 minutes from your location if you take— Yes, Rosa interrupted. Yes, I can drive her. Which hospital? The dispatcher gave her directions. Rosa's mind was already racing ahead. The car. She needed the car. They had to go now. Right now. She thanked the dispatcher and hung up. Lily, honey, we're going to take a car ride to the hospital, okay? The doctors there will help you breathe better. Rosa was already moving, grabbing Lily's coat, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. The little girl nodded weakly. Rosa scooped Lily into her arms. The child felt so light, so fragile. Rosa could feel her heart hammering against her ribs as she carried Lily down the stairs. Please, God, please let us make it in time. She rushed to the key hook by the garage door where Mr. Chen kept his everyday car keys. Her hands patted the empty hooks. Nothing. Where were the keys? Think, Rosa, think. Mr. Chen had driven to the city. He'd taken his car. Of course he had her own car. She could use her own car. Except her car was dead. Completely dead. It wouldn't even start this morning. Rosa felt like the walls were closing in on her. Lily whimpered in her arms. The sound was getting worse. That horrible wheezing was now punctuated by a high-pitched whistle every time she tried to inhale. Rosa knew enough about asthma to know what that meant. Lily's airways were closing. They were running out of time. It's okay, baby. I'm going to figure this out. Just hold on. Rosa's mind spun in circles. The nearest neighbor was half a mile away. By the time she ran there, got them to understand the situation, came back. Too long. Way too long. She could call a taxi. Her fingers were already pulling up the app on her phone when she realized the truth. They were in the countryside. No taxi would get here fast enough. Even Uber would take 20 minutes just to arrive, and they didn't have 20 minutes. Lily's breathing was becoming more desperate. She was making a sound Rosa had never heard before, a kind of gasping wheeze that sent ice through her veins. The little girl's eyes were starting to look unfocused. That's when Rosa's gaze fell on the door. The one that led to the climate-controlled garage. The one that was always locked. The one that held the car. The Ferrari. The $48 million Ferrari. No, she couldn't. Mr. Chen would never forgive her. He'd fire her. He might even call the police. That car was his most precious possession. He'd fired someone for barely scratching it. What would he do to someone who took it without permission? Lily coughed again, and this time she couldn't catch her breath afterward. She was turning blue. Actually blue. Her little fingers dug into Rosa's arm, her eyes wide with terror. Rosa ran. She didn't think. She just ran. Up the stairs, down the hallway, into Mr. Chen's study. The room she was never supposed to enter alone. The keys hung on the wall, gleaming under the soft light. Her hand reached up and grabbed them. She could hear her mother's voice in her head from years ago, teaching her right from wrong. "We may be poor, Rosa, but we are not thieves." Rosa had lived her whole life by that rule. Never took anything that wasn't hers. Never even borrowed something without asking. But this wasn't stealing. This was saving a life. Wasn't it? Her hands were shaking so hard the keys jangled as she ran back down the stairs. Lily was slumped against the wall where Rosa had set her down, her eyes half closed. Rosa's heart nearly stopped. "Lily, stay with me, sweetheart." She shook the little girl gently. Lily's eyes opened a bit. Still conscious. Thank God. Rosa fumbled with the garage door lock. It took 3 tries to get the key in. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. The lock clicked and she pulled the door open. The garage was cool and smelled like leather and expensive machinery. The car sat there under its cover like a sleeping dragon. Rosa didn't have time to remove the cover properly. She just yanked it off, letting it fall to the ground in a heap. There it was, the Ferrari. Even in her panic, Rosa could see why Mr. Chen loved it. It was beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. The red paint seemed to glow in the garage lights. Every curve was perfect. It looked like art, like something that should be in a museum, not driven, especially not driven by a terrified housekeeper who'd learned to drive on the chaotic streets of Manila, and whose own car was a 20-year-old sedan that barely ran. Rosa opened the passenger door. It opened upward in a way that seemed impossible, and carefully placed Lily inside. The seats were leather, probably worth more than Rosa's entire life savings. She buckled Lily in with trembling fingers. "Stay with me, Lily. We're going to the hospital. You're going to be okay." She was saying it as much for herself as for the little girl. Rosa ran around to the driver's side. The door opened upward just like the other side. She climbed in and immediately everything felt wrong. The seat was too low. The steering wheel was too close. The dashboard had more buttons and gauges than an airplane. Where was the ignition? How did you even start this thing? She found the ignition and inserted the key with shaking hands. "Please start. Please, God, let it start." She'd heard stories about old cars that needed special care, special procedures. What if it didn't start? What if it hadn't been driven in so long that... She turned the key. The engine roared to life with a sound like thunder. The whole garage seemed to shake. Rosa jumped, her foot hitting something, the gas pedal, and the engine screamed even louder. Warning lights flashed on the dashboard. She had no idea what any of them meant. Lily was barely conscious in the passenger seat, her breathing nothing more than shallow gasps. Rosa put her foot on what she hoped was the brake and shifted the gear. The car lurched forward and she yelped. This wasn't like her car. This wasn't like any car she'd ever driven. Every tiny movement she made, the car responded like it was alive, like it was eager to leap forward. She pressed the button for the garage door. It opened with agonizing slowness. Every second that ticked by felt like Lily was slipping further away. The moment the door was high enough, Rosa pressed the gas. The Ferrari shot forward like a rocket. Rosa screamed and slammed on the brakes. The car screeched to a stop. Her heart was hammering. Lily was jostled but still buckled in safely. "I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry. I'm going to get you there. I promise." Rosa's voice was barely more than a whisper. She tried again, more gently this time. The car rolled forward, out of the garage, into the cool night air. The driveway stretched ahead of her, long and dark. She could do this. She had to do this. But as she reached for the gear shift, her phone buzzed. She glanced down. A notification from the home security system. "Garage breach detected. Police have been notified, of course. Of course Mr. Chen had a security system on the garage. Of course it was connected to his phone. Of course the police had been called. It didn't matter. Nothing mattered except getting Lily to the hospital." Rosa shifted the gear and pressed the gas pedal. The Ferrari responded with a roar and they shot down the driveway, gravel spraying behind them. Rosa's hands gripped the steering wheel so hard her knuckles turned white. The car was so powerful, so fast, so completely beyond her control. Every turn felt like they might flip. Every bump in the road made her certain she was about to crash this priceless machine. But when she looked over at Lily, at her pale face and blue-tinged lips, Rosa pressed the gas pedal harder. She had made her choice. There was no going back now. Whatever happened next, whether Mr. Chen fired her, whether the police arrested her, whether she lost everything, None of it mattered as much as the little girl struggling to breathe in the seat beside her. The mansion disappeared behind them as they raced toward the main road. Rosa's phone buzzed again and again. She didn't look. She kept her eyes on the road and her foot on the gas, praying to every saint she could remember from childhood. Somewhere behind her, alarms were going off. Phone calls were being made. Police were being dispatched. But Rosa didn't know that yet. All she knew was that Lily's breathing was getting worse and the hospital was still 30 minutes away. 30 minutes. It might as well have been a lifetime. The country road stretched ahead like a dark ribbon, and Rosa's entire world had narrowed to three things: the yellow lines on the pavement, the sound of Lily's labored breathing, and the feel of the steering wheel vibrating under her white-knuckled grip. She'd never driven anything like this Ferrari. Her old car back in Manila had been a manual transmission, sure, but it was gentle, forgiving. When you made a mistake, it would sputter and complain, but eventually do what you wanted. This car was different. This car was like holding onto a wild animal that was barely contained. Every tiny movement of her foot on the gas pedal made it surge forward with terrifying power. "Stay with me. Lily, please stay with me," Rosa kept talking, even though she wasn't sure the little girl could hear her anymore. Lily's head had lolled to the side, her eyes closed, her chest rising and falling in shallow, desperate movements. The GPS on Rosa's phone was giving directions in a calm, pleasant voice that made Rosa want to scream. "In half a mile, turn right onto Highway 47. Like this was just a normal drive. Like a child wasn't dying in the passenger seat. Rosa's phone buzzed again. And again. She risked a glance. 23 missed calls from Mr. Chen. 15 text messages. The preview of the latest one flashed on the screen. "Where is my car? Where is Lily?" Her stomach twisted with guilt and fear, but she couldn't think about that now. She couldn't think about anything except the road and getting to the hospital. Her foot pressed harder on the gas pedal. The Ferrari's engine roared louder. The speedometer climbed past numbers Rosa had never seen in real life. 60, 70, 80. The trees along the roadside became a blur. Her heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. She hit the turn onto Highway 47 too fast. The car's tires squealed, and for a terrifying moment Rosa felt the back end start to slide. She'd seen enough action movies to know what happened next. The car would spin, they'd crash, and everything would be over. But somehow, her hands did the right thing. She turned into the skid like her father had taught her decades ago when she was learning to drive. The car straightened out and they were still moving forward. Still alive, Rosa let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. "I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry." She reached over and squeezed Lily's hand. It was cold. Too cold. The highway was busier than the country road. Cars everywhere, even at this hour. Rosa wove between them, her heart jumping into her throat every time she had to swerve. The Ferrari responded to her every movement instantly, aggressively. There was no delay between thought and action. When she turned the wheel even slightly, the car changed lanes like a dart. Horns blared at her. Headlights flashed. A truck driver leaned on his horn as she cut in front of him. Rosa didn't care. She couldn't care. Every second counted. Every moment meant the difference between life and death for the little girl beside her. In the distance, she could see the flashing lights of the accident the 911 dispatcher had mentioned. The highway narrowed from 3 lanes to 1. Cars were backed up, brake lights glowing red in the darkness. 3 ambulances were on the scene, their lights painting the night in red and blue. There was no way through. Not legally. Not safely. Rosa looked at the shoulder of the road, narrow, rough, probably not meant for cars to drive on. She glanced at Lily. The little girl's lips were now a deep purple blue. Her breathing had become so shallow that Rosa had to watch carefully to see if her chest was even moving. Rosa yanked the wheel to the right. The Ferrari bumped onto the shoulder, and the ride immediately became rough. The car wasn't meant for this kind of driving. It was meant for smooth, perfect racetracks and pristine roads. But Rosa didn't have a choice. She pressed forward, the car bouncing and shaking as she drove past the line of stopped traffic. People stared at her through their windows. Some looked angry. Some looked shocked. One man pulled out his phone, probably recording or calling the police. Rosa kept driving. "In 1 mile, County General Hospital will be on your right." The GPS voice remained annoyingly calm. 1 mile. Just 1 more mile. Lily could hold on for 1 more mile. She had to. Rosa merged back onto the highway after passing the accident. The road opened up ahead and she could see the hospital in the distance, a tall building with lights on every floor. It looked like hope, like salvation. That's when she saw the flashing lights in her rearview mirror. Police. Of course, between the security system at Mr. Chen's house, the erratic driving, and probably half a dozen calls from angry drivers, of course the police were after her. The patrol car's siren wailed, cutting through the night. The officer hit his lights twice, the universal signal for pull over. Rosa's hands tightened on the steering wheel. She looked at Lily, then at the hospital that was now so close, then back at the police lights behind her. She didn't pull over. She couldn't. Not when they were this close. Rosa pressed the gas pedal to the floor. The Ferrari exploded forward with a force that threw her back against the seat. The engine screamed. The speedometer climbed past 90, past 100. The world outside became a blur of lights and shadows. The police car tried to keep up, but the Ferrari was faster. Much faster. Rosa had never driven anywhere near this speed in her life. Her whole body was shaking. Tears were streaming down her face. This was insane. This was illegal. She was going to jail. She was going to lose everything. But Lily needed a hospital. Nothing else mattered. More police cars joined the chase. Rosa could see them in her rearview mirror. 3 now, maybe 4. Their sirens created a wall of sound that seemed to chase her down the highway. The hospital was getting closer. Half a mile, quarter mile. The exit appeared on her right. Rosa took it too fast. The Ferrari's tires screaming in protest. The car tilted dangerously to one side. For a heart-stopping moment, Rosa was certain they were going to roll. But the tires gripped and the car stayed upright. She was on the hospital access road now. The building loomed ahead, massive and bright. The emergency entrance was lit up with signs and lights. Rosa could see the ambulance bay, the automatic doors, the people in scrubs walking in and out, almost there. Almost there.
"Hold on, Lily, please, baby, just hold on." But Rosa wasn't paying enough attention to the road.
A speed bump appeared out of nowhere. She hit it going way too fast. The Ferrari launched into the air for a split second and Rosa's stomach dropped. They came down hard, the car's suspension bottoming out with a horrible scraping sound. Something under the car made a terrible grinding noise. The steering wheel pulled to the left. Rosa fought to keep the car straight. More grinding sounds. She'd damaged something. Probably something expensive. Probably something that cost more than she'd make in 5 years. She didn't care. The emergency entrance was right there. Rosa slammed on the brakes. The Ferrari skidded, leaving black marks on the pavement, and screeched to a stop in the ambulance bay. Right in front of the emergency entrance, blocking everything. The car was probably parked illegally. It was definitely parked illegally. She didn't care about that either. The police cars pulled in behind her, their sirens still wailing. Car doors opened. Rosa heard shouting, "Driver, turn off the engine. Put your hands where we can see them." Rosa's hands fumbled with the door handle. How did you open this door? Where was the handle? Everything looked the same in the dark. Finally, she found it. The door swung upward and Rosa practically fell out of the car. "Help!" she screamed toward the emergency entrance. "Please, she can't breathe." She's 8 years old. 2 nurses who'd been standing outside smoking cigarettes dropped them and ran over. A doctor in blue scrubs appeared from inside. They saw Lily through the car's window and immediately understood. This wasn't about the car or the police chase or any of that. This was about a dying child. "Get a gurney," the doctor shouted. "Now!" More people in scrubs came running out. Someone rushed up with a stretcher on wheels. Rosa ran around to the passenger side, yanked the door open, and started unbuckling Lily. Her fingers were shaking so badly she could barely work the seatbelt. "Let me," one of the nurses said gently, pushing Rosa's hands aside and expertly releasing the belt. They lifted Lily out together, laying her on the gurney. The little girl looked so small, so pale. 8-year-old female, severe asthma attack, cyanotic respiratory distress, the doctor rattled off as they rushed toward the entrance. A nurse placed an oxygen mask over Lily's face. Another was already taking her pulse. Rosa tried to follow, but a hand grabbed her arm, firm, unyielding. "Ma'am, you need to stay here." She turned to find herself face to face with a police officer. He was young, maybe 30, with a serious expression. Behind him, 3 more officers were approaching, hands on their belts. "Please," Rosa begged. "That's She caught herself. Not her daughter. Not her anything, officially. That's the little girl I take care of. I need to be with her. She's scared. She needs someone she knows. Ma'am, I need you to put your hands on the hood of the vehicle. You don't understand. Her father's not here. She's all alone in there. She's 8 years old and she's terrified, and hands on the vehicle, now." The officer's voice was harder this time. Rosa's eyes darted between the officer and the emergency entrance where Lily had just disappeared. Every instinct in her body was screaming at her to run inside, to stay with Lily, to make sure she was okay. But the officer's grip on her arm tightened. More police cars were arriving. An officer was taking photos of the Ferrari. Another was examining the scrape marks underneath. They were all talking into their radios using codes Rosa didn't understand. The officer guided Rosa's hands onto the hood of the Ferrari. The metal was still warm from the engine. "Do you have any weapons on you?" "What? No weapons. I'm a housekeeper." Is this your vehicle, ma'am?" Rosa's mouth went dry. Here it was. The moment of truth. She could lie. But what was the point? They'd figure it out in 5 minutes anyway. "No." "Then whose vehicle is it?" "My employer's, Mr. Chen, Richard Chen. I work for him. I take care of his daughter." "That's his daughter." Rosa pointed toward the hospital entrance where Lily had disappeared. The officer's expression didn't change. "So you took your employer's vehicle without permission?" She couldn't breathe. Rosa's voice broke. "The ambulances couldn't get there for almost an hour. Her inhaler was empty. She was turning blue. What was I supposed to do? Let her die? Ma'am, I need you to remain calm." "Remain calm?" Rosa laughed, and it came out sounding slightly hysterical. "I just drove a $48 million car that I barely know how to drive with a dying child in the passenger seat, and you want me to remain calm?" The officer's eyebrows went up at the mention of $48 million. He looked at the Ferrari with new eyes. Another officer came over and whispered something in his ear. Rosa caught the words, "Stolen vehicle report," and "Richard Chen." "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to turn around and place your hands behind your back." Rosa's heart sank. "You're arresting me? We have a report of a stolen vehicle. Until we can verify your story and speak with the owner, yes, you're being detained. But Lily, the little girl, I need to know if she's okay. Please, please, just let me call her father. Let me—" The officer was already pulling out handcuffs. The cold metal clicked around Rosa's wrists. The sound was the worst thing she'd ever heard. Worse than Lily's labored breathing. Worse than the police sirens. This sound meant it was real. She was actually being arrested. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. The officer's words faded into background noise. Rosa stared at the emergency entrance, willing someone to come out and tell her that Lily was okay. That she was breathing. That Rosa's insane illegal drive had been worth it. But no one came out. The automatic doors just kept opening and closing as medical staff went about their business. Rosa was led toward a police car, her hands cuffed behind her back, still wearing her house slippers and an apron with cartoon cats on it. One of the officers opened the back door of the patrol car. Rosa had seen this 1,000 times in movies and TV shows, but never imagined she'd be the one being put in the back seat. The officer placed his hand on top of her head, guiding her down into the car, just like in the movies. The door slammed shut. Rosa was alone in the back seat behind a metal grate, her hands cuffed behind her. Through the window she could see the Ferrari. Even damaged, even with scrape marks and smoking slightly. It was still the most beautiful car she'd ever seen. It was also probably the most expensive mistake she'd ever made. Her phone was still in her pocket, buzzing nonstop. Mr. Chen was probably calling. Or the security company, or who knows who else. But with her hands cuffed behind her back, Rosa couldn't reach it. All she could do was sit there, in the back of a police car in the hospital parking lot, and pray. Pray that Lily was okay. Pray that Mr. Chen would understand. Pray that her sacrifice meant something. Through the police car window, Rosa watched the emergency entrance. She watched and waited and prayed, and hoped that when everything was said and done, when the truth came out, someone would understand that she'd had no choice, that sometimes breaking the rules is the only way to do the right thing. Rosa had been sitting in the back of the police car for 20 minutes, though it felt like hours. Her shoulders ached from having her hands cuffed behind her back. Her house slippers had fallen off somewhere during the chaos and her feet were cold against the car's rubber floor mat. But none of that mattered. All she could think about was Lily. Was she breathing? Had the doctors helped her in time? Was she scared? Waking up in a hospital with strangers around and no one she knew? Rosa's heart physically hurt thinking about it. Through the window, she watched officers examine the Ferrari. One was taking photos from every angle. Another was on his phone, probably talking to Mr. Chen. A third was filling out paperwork on a clipboard. They kept looking over at Rosa, then back at the car, shaking their heads like they couldn't quite believe what had happened. Rosa couldn't believe it either. 12 hours ago, her biggest worry was her broken-down car. Now she was sitting in handcuffs, having stolen a vehicle worth more money than she'd see in 10 lifetimes. Her mother would be so disappointed. Her mother, who'd always told her to be honest, to work hard, to never take shortcuts. But saving Lily wasn't a shortcut. It was the only road available. The driver's side door of the police car opened and the young officer who'd arrested her slid into the front seat. He turned to look at her through the metal grate that separated them. "The hospital just sent someone out," he said. "The girl, Lily, she's stable. They got her breathing under control. She's going to be okay." Rosa's entire body sagged with relief. Tears immediately sprang to her eyes and rolled down her cheeks. "Thank God, oh thank God, you got her here just in time." The doctor said another 5 minutes and he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Rosa nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. She'd done it. Lily was alive. Everything else, the arrest, the damaged car, losing her job, whatever came next, none of it mattered compared to that. "Ma'am, I need to ask you some questions," the officer continued. "Can you tell me exactly what happened tonight?" So Rosa told him everything. About Lily's asthma attack, about the empty inhalers, about calling 911 and learning the ambulances were delayed, about her own broken-down car, about making the desperate decision to take the Ferrari, because there was literally no other option. She told him about the terrifying drive, about Lily turning blue, about knowing she was breaking the law but not caring because a child's life was at stake. The officer listened without interrupting, writing notes on a small pad. When Rosa finished, he studied her for a long moment. "That's quite a story. It's the truth. You can ask the 911 dispatcher. Check the call logs." "I'm not lying. I believe you," he said quietly. "But believing you and the law are two different things. You still took a vehicle that wasn't yours without permission. You fled from police. You drove recklessly, endangering other motorists. That Ferrari has about $30,000 in damage from what the mechanic can see so far." Rosa felt sick. $30,000. She made $32,000 a year. It would take her entire year's salary just to pay for the damage, and that was before lawyers, before court fees, before whatever else came with being arrested. "I understand," she whispered. "I know I broke the law. I couldn't let her die." The officer's radio crackled. A voice said something about the vehicle owner arriving on scene. The officer responded and then looked back at Rosa. "Mr. Chen just got here. We're going to need to speak with him before we can proceed." Rosa's stomach dropped even further. She was about to face Mr. Chen, the man whose trust she'd violated, whose priceless car she'd damaged, whose daughter she'd put at risk with her reckless driving, even if it was to save her life. Through the window, Rosa saw a black BMW screech to a stop in the parking lot. Mr. Chen practically fell out of the driver's seat, his tie loose, his hair messy, his face wild with panic. Rosa had never seen him look anything less than perfectly composed. Now he looked like a man coming apart at the seams. He ran toward the emergency entrance, but one of the officers intercepted him. They talked for a moment, the officer gesturing toward the Ferrari, then toward the police car where Rosa sat. Mr. Chen's head whipped around, his eyes finding her through the window. The expression on his face made Rosa want to disappear. It wasn't anger exactly. It was worse. It was betrayal, confusion, fear all mixed together. He started toward the police car, but another officer stopped him, pointing toward the hospital entrance and apparently telling him to check on his daughter first. Mr. Chen hesitated, looked at Rosa one more time, then ran into the hospital. Rosa put her head back against the seat and closed her eyes. She'd never felt so exhausted in her entire life. Not tired physically, though she was that too. Tired in her soul. tired of being poor, tired of impossible choices, tired of a world where saving a child's life meant destroying your own. 15 minutes passed. Then 20. Rosa watched nurses and doctors come and go through the emergency entrance. She watched the officers continue documenting the Ferrari. She watched an ambulance arrive with another patient. Life went on around her, but she felt frozen in time, stuck in this moment of waiting. Finally, Mr. Chen emerged from the hospital. He wasn't running anymore. He walked slowly, like a man who'd just been through something traumatic. He headed straight for the officer in charge, an older sergeant with gray hair. They talked for what felt like forever. Mr. Chen kept gesturing toward the hospital, toward the Ferrari, toward the police car where Rosa sat. The sergeant was nodding, taking notes, explaining things. At one point, Mr. Chen's face crumpled, and he put his hands over his face. His shoulders shook. The sergeant put a hand on his shoulder, the way you do when someone is crying. Rosa's chest tightened. She'd never seen Mr. Chen cry. Not when his wife died, not ever. What had the hospital told him? Was Lily worse than the officer had said? Had something gone wrong? After what felt like an eternity, Mr. Chen and the sergeant walked toward the police car. Rosa's heart started hammering. This was it, the moment of truth. The young officer opened the back door. Mr. Chen stood there looking down at her. Rosa couldn't read his expression. His eyes were red from crying, his face pale. For a long moment he just stared at her, and Rosa stared back, trying to convey with her eyes all the apologies she wanted to say. "Get her out of those handcuffs," Mr. Chen said quietly to the officer. "Sir, I'm not sure that's—" "Get her out of the handcuffs now, please." His voice was firmer this time. The young officer looked at his sergeant, who nodded. They helped Rosa out of the car and removed the handcuffs. The relief of having her arms free was immediate, but Rosa barely noticed. She was focused entirely on Mr. Chen, waiting for the explosion of anger she deserved. Instead, he pulled her into a hug. Rosa stood there, frozen in shock, as her employer, this man who never showed emotion, who barely even smiled, held her while his whole body shook with sobs. She could feel his tears soaking into her shoulder. She could feel him trembling. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you. Thank you. Thank you." Rosa's own tears started falling. She hugged him back, and they stood there in the hospital parking lot. Two people bound together by a little girl who meant everything to both of them. When Mr. Chen finally pulled back, he kept his hands on Rosa's shoulders, looking directly into her eyes. "The doctor said if you'd waited for the ambulance, Lily would have died. Her oxygen levels were at 14% when you got here. 14%. Normal is 95 to 100. Another few minutes and her brain would have started shutting down." Rosa's knees felt weak. She'd known it was bad, but hearing the numbers made it real in a way it hadn't been before. "You saved her life," Mr. Chen continued, his voice breaking. "My daughter is alive because of you, because you were brave enough to do what needed to be done, even knowing the consequences." "I'm so sorry about the car," Rosa managed to say. "I know how much it meant to you. I'll pay for the damage. I don't know how, but I'll figure it out. I'll work extra jobs. Rosa, stop." Mr. Chen actually laughed, though it came out watery and broken. "Do you really think I care about the car? It's metal and rubber and old parts. My daughter is flesh and blood and the only family I have left. There is no comparison." He turned to the sergeant. "I'm not pressing charges. Rosa had my permission to use any vehicle necessary to get my daughter medical care. This is all a misunderstanding." The sergeant raised an eyebrow. "Sir, with all due respect, your security company called in a stolen vehicle report. Your home security system registered a breach. The GPS tracking showed unauthorized use. Are you saying all of that was somehow authorized?" Mr. Chen didn't hesitate. "I'm saying that Rosa has worked for me for 3 years. She has keys to my house. She has the security codes. She has my complete trust. If she took the car, it's because she needed it. And given that my daughter is alive right now because of her actions, I'd say her judgment was sound, sir. There's still the matter of fleeing from police, reckless driving, endangering other motorists. I'll take full responsibility for any damages or violations," Mr. Chen interrupted. "Send me the bills. Send me the tickets. Whatever it costs, I'll pay it. But Rosa is not a criminal. She's a hero." The sergeant looked between them, then sighed. "Sir, I understand your gratitude, but the law is the law. We have procedures." Then follow your procedures, Mr. Chen said, his voice taking on that edge Rosa recognized from his business calls. File your reports. Do what you need to do. But Rosa is not spending 1 second in a jail cell. Do we understand each other? There was something in his tone that brooked no argument. This was the man who'd built a tech empire from nothing, the man who negotiated million-dollar deals, the man who was used to getting his way. The sergeant studied him for a long moment, then nodded. We'll need statements from both of you.